On today's World Insight, vibrant people-to-people relations between China and America despite trade tension. What's fueling these exchanges? Hear from Da Wei, the director of Tsinghua University's Center for International Security and Strategy. And a conversation on China-U.S. cultural exchanges with executive director of the Carolina Performing Arts at the University of North Carolina.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Despite tensions between China and the United States over the tariffs, people-to-people exchanges remain vibrant. David Perdue arrived in Beijing last week as the new U.S. ambassador to China. Also recently, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with a series of guests coming from the United States, such as the president of the United States Asia Society, a New York City-based international nonprofit organization. Also this week, students from the Max Baucus Institute of University of Montana are taking another trip to China. So today we are presenting this edition of our program on the issues of China-U.S. relations. Let's meet, first of all, Da Wei, one of the most respected Chinese scholars on relations between China and the United States these days. Da now serves as the director of the Center for International Security and Strategy with Tsinghua University, a think tank focused on change in the global dynamics, with an emphasis on China's perspectives and policy propositions. You're watching World Insight. With me right now in the studio, Da Wei, director of the Center for International Security and Strategy with Tsinghua University, one of the most respected scholars in China on China-U.S. relations. Professor Da, I've long looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Now, tell me more. What exactly are the takeaways from your perspective after China and the United States reached this joint declaration, made it public, and there seems to be a 90 days that the two sides can use as a window opportunity?
This is an economic and trade negotiation, but I first and foremost view this from political perspective. I think politically this is extremely important. First of all, let's look at what they have came out after the negotiation. It's a joint statement. Can we remember when did we have, China-U.S. had a joint statement before that one?
2023, Sunnyland, isn't it, on climate?
Yeah, that's very long time, right? But this time, the two sides sitting together, and also make this joint statement and, delivered some shared view of the two sides to the whole world. So this is very important. And of course, I'm not a government official. I don't know what do they think, on the two sides. But I guess my speculation is before this negotiation, maybe the two sides may wondering if the other side is workable, if this issue is negotiable with the other side. Does the other side really want to negotiate with me? I think, to be honest, I think the two sides distrust each other very deeply. So before they went to Geneva, I guess there are all those suspicions, concerns, but after 2 days in Geneva, they returned, they gave a shared view, they have a joint statement. I think
and they have a mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. Very important. They have a mechanism for dialogues. So politically, this is actually the very first time the two sides, with this administration, Chinese government and the Trump administration, senior officials sit down together and face to face have negotiation. The first time. I think this is, of course. I think that will start a negotiation of all the dialogues, communications of the two governments. I think this is, for me, the biggest takeaway or the most encouraging signal.
Comments coming from the U.S. side, scholars such as Lawrence Summers, who also served in earlier administrations, as well as Elizabeth Economy, who you know both of them very well. They discuss in some different media discussions and suggest that U.S. pivot on trade dealing with China. Summers believe there's pressure on the U.S. On the Chinese economy. The Chinese feel there's pressure on their own economy, but also the U.S., there's even more pressure on the U.S. economy. That's why this earlier Geneva talk eventually resulted in something that many people feel quite happy about. What do you think that who is having more urgency and who can allow with their mechanism and governance system, more pressure, quote unquote.
I think one of the issue is the two sides seems both sides are kind of confident about themselves. They believe they can, of course, they can not only survive this pressure, their economy can even continue to grow under this pressure. So, and both sides believe the other side have very painful time during this pressure. So that's the reason I think the two sides, particularly, I'm happy the two governments make it, but I mean, generally speaking, the incentive for negotiation on the two sides are not very strong before the Geneva side negotiation, because both sides believe we are, the time is on our side. My personal view is the U.S. side is on a more difficult situation after the announcement of this, all this comprehensive tariff basically on the whole world. Why I said that? Just look at the outcome. Actually, after this April 2nd, this is kind of declare a trade war against all over the world, the rest of the world. But then now, after that, after China announced retaliation, basically Secretary of Treasury Benson, I think he advised President Trump to postpone the tariff on other countries, just single China out. So basically, that's a kind of pause of the tariff policy. And then after that, less than 1 month, China and the U.S. China is the only one now. Before Geneva, China was the only one that the U.S. targeting at having that tariff. But within 1 month, the two sides sit down and they had that truce again. So basically, if you look at the outcome, after 1 month, now after 1.5 months, the U.S. have stopped or postponed almost all its, Liberation Day tariff, except for that 10%, basic one. So it stopped or it postponed everything. So from that outcome, I will say the U.S. side, at least those, pragmatic, members in the cabinet, I think they feel the pressure. And they feel, this kind of tariff policy could cause strong uncertainty to U.S. economy and the world economy.
Right. Now, if you look at the rest of the world, as you said, right before China-U.S. talk, it was only China that really retaliated against the so-called reciprocal tariffs of the United States, raised it to almost the same level against the U.S. as U.S. set its own earlier against China. So. And now we have this result. What does that say to both sides? What does that say to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I think for the rest of the world, they are watching this. I think if I were, someone from the rest of the world, I may learn two things from this negotiation. First is both China and the U.S. still want to talk. They still want to stabilize their bilateral relations, maybe gradually decoupling, but they don't want to see dramatic turbulence on the market. So this is a good news. So I think that will encouraging all the negotiators, all over the world, including Americans and the rest of the world, for future negotiation. This is still something, each side, want. The other signal I will got, if I'm from the rest of the world, is you need to stand firmly against the U.S. pressure. If you are too weak, you may induce more, pressure or even humiliation from that side. Right? So when you see China, of course, different countries have different policy.
Circumstances.
Yeah, they have different circumstances. I'm not saying their reaction was wrong.
Nature of relationship.
Yeah, but when they see China's firm reaction, sharp reaction to the U.S. policy, and then after that, China-U.S. can still reach some kind of agreement or postpone that tariff, I think they will be encouraged from that perspective.
This 90-day, what does that say to the rest of the world?
I think the China-U.S. economic ties, are going to decouple. I think, to be honest, to be in a very frank way, but maybe it will decouple in a slow and incremental way, but that's the direction. I don't think we can change our assessment, say, the two sides now can be interdependent again. No way. I think the basic direction is very, very clear. And And I'm not very optimistic to the outcome after the 90 days. I think now the tariff level the U.S. have on Chinese products is above 50%. This is still too high. I think it's kind of, prohibitive, tariff that was basically essentially stop the trade between the two sides. Of course, we can maybe lower some tariff within the 90 days. So for instance, so-called fentanyl tariff, or maybe remove the 24% tariff, which has been postponed forever. If that happens, of course, that's a good thing. But I don't think we will necessarily see that. I think this is quite difficult.
It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, there are already some new development after China-U.S. jointly made that statement. One is the trade rep of the United States and also China's Vice Minister of Commerce, Li Chenggang. They met on the sideline of APEC ministerial meeting in South Korea earlier.
Yeah.
We did not see much public outcome being made. Of course, this is not necessarily for bilateral talk. It is more a multilateral in which they just met. This is one thing. The other thing is the latest turbulence regarding AI, artificial intelligence, especially the latest technology such as Huawei's chip that are used for AI development, with the new measures coming out of the U.S. Commerce Department. So how do you see, in terms of the new development on mechanism, which you mentioned, on meeting and outcome, and then also on other aspects of this relationship? Technology, of course, is one of the core areas.
Yeah, these two cases you raised actually exactly reflect what is happening, or
the complexity of the issue.
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that we mentioned we have a mechanism now. The two sides start to talk. So the first one, the two ministers, they met. This is a good news. And then, of course, on the Huawei chip semiconducting, this is a bad news. But again, what is happening is not we are moving towards a positive, a bright side, bright future, or to a completely dark side. I think this is a very complicated situation. The two sides, through this mechanism, can manage the process. I want to stress here, it's a management. It's not a completely change to either, positive side or negative side.
It's not a change of nature, but rather how to manage this process. In the issue of chips, we see some of the industry leaders, such as from NVIDIA, from AMD, and even Bill Gates himself as an individual in media interviews publicly spoke against the current U.S. framework, suggesting it only makes China to be more determined to nurture its own system and eventually make the U.S. companies lose all the market and making China more competitive. So putting their arguments aside, Professor, what do you see will be the roles of other players, such as industry and others?
I think, of course, if we view the government decision-making process as a box, I hope it's not a black box, but it's a box. So you need some input, of course.
Sure.
So those voices you mentioned are the kind of inbox. And when the economic situation changes and when we have new technological breakthrough, so situation changes, of course, then those voices will, or those factors will feel the new pressure. For instance, the AI, or semiconductor technology is developing. So many semiconductor producers in the U.S. feel the U.S. is not, it's not in the U.S. interest or in the American company's interest. So they try to express their different views. They will input their voice in the administration in Washington, D.C. So of course, that's an important factor. But this is a big but, I will say. The Trump administration on the U.S. side, the decision-making process is very unpredictable, I have to say that. So we don't know how, to whom President Trump listened.
We recently have witnessed a series of exchanges On the official side, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with the president of U.S. Nonprofit organization Asia Society, while there are others nonprofit organizations that are coming to China and doing interactions. Meanwhile, academic and young people exchanges are intensifying right now as we speak. You yourself has been earlier talked to your colleagues and delegation coming from University of Pennsylvania. We also see the Max Box Center from the University of Montana visiting China. These are just one of those many examples going on. So how do you see the role that people-to-people exchanges can still hold today in the nature of China-U.S. relations?
Yeah, I think, as you said, I work in university, so I'm kind of practitioner of the people-to-people tie.
Indeed.
I hosted several U.S. American university students delegation to Beijing, to Tsinghua. So I'm happy to play that role. So China-U.S. relations, we always say China-U.S. relations have three pillars. One is economic security pillar, the other is trade and economic pillar, the third is people to people. So now the first and the second, of course, be damaged a lot in past decade. Of course, people to people also be damaged a lot, but still many people on the two sides, I mean, both in China and in the US, want to maintain this because all in all, China-U.S. relationship, is the relationship between the American people and the Chinese people, right? This is the foundation. This is the basic of the bilateral relations. So we try to maintain this, and particularly for the students, for the educational exchanges. How our younger generation view the other side. I think this is a very critical issue. At least, no matter what's the nature of the bilateral relations, you have to understand the other side accurately. I think this is and also we're human. We should talk to each other to humanize these bilateral relations. Right. I think this is a nature, but of course it's difficult. I have to say it's difficult. In recent months, though we have a lot of interactions with American partners, but we can feel the pressure. I mean, for instance, the U.S. Congress targeting at some American universities recently, and I know some Chinese scholars, the trip to the U.S. being kind of harassed or their visa be revoked. All those signals, give us, some kind of relatively dark picture, future. We're still striving for brighter future and still, try to carry on these P2P exchanges. It's not easy.
Thank you so much, Professor Da Wei, for very resilient and also straightforward in the conversation. And you're watching World Insight. Our conversation earlier with Professor Da Wei on the current state of U.S.-China relations and what's next. And next in our program, a conversation on China-U.S. cultural exchanges with the Executive and Artistic Director of Carolina Performing Arts of the University of North Carolina, who lived in China for 2 decades. Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Let's continue our series of interviews with bridge builders around the world, where we talk about those dedicated to China-U.S. friendship, as well as friendship between China and the rest of the world, whether it rains or shines. One of them is Alison Friedman, now the Executive and Artistic Director of the Carolina Performing Arts at the University of North Carolina. Friedman came to China as a U.S. college graduate at the age of 22. Later, she was immersed in China's art industry. Over the years, she's dedicated herself to drawing the two countries together. She was a 2002 to 2003 Fulbright Scholar to China, and then she worked as Performing Arts Director for the West Kowloon Cultural District in Hong Kong. She also set up Ping Pong Production, a cultural exchange nonprofit, over the years. After 20 years in China, Friedman is now in North Carolina, where she keeps making China-U.S. exchanges through arts and culture. Take a look. Joining us, Alison Friedman, Executive and Artistic Director of Carolina Performing Arts at the University of North Carolina. During your China years, you were trying to create a small enterprise and being the bridge for different cultures, especially between China and the United States. It's called ping pong, isn't it? How do you see, while you are doing it, the relationship evolve between the two countries? How did you and many of your peers try to adjust to so many of these ups and downs?
It was really the changing relationship that inspired me to start Ping Pong Productions, Ping Pong Tsinghua. I looked around in the lead up to the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and I realized in Beijing I had opportunities to go to Starbucks, to watch American movies. And I knew that was aspects of American culture, but it wasn't the whole story. And on the reverse side, my parents in Washington, they could read about China every day in the Washington Post. And those articles were not wrong, but they were incomplete. They didn't tell the whole story of the city or the country that I was experiencing at that time. And so I thought, okay, we need to, what is the and? You know, yes, this is true, and there's all these other things that are also true. And how do you expand a perception with and? It's through the arts. To me, the arts are a powerful force to show, don't tell. This was an adage my writing teachers used to tell me. If you say beautiful, what does that mean? You know, everybody's interpretation of beautiful is different. But if you paint a picture, if you show through words, then somebody's going to have an emotional experience and understand it differently. So the arts can show us rather than tell us what to think. And so that was the inspiration to, you know, to add, not to give answers, because who am I to know the answer, but it's to give a broader and perspective of America, of China, of other countries and cultures as well. We worked in more than 50 countries on 5 continents while I ran Ping Pong, bringing Chinese dance, theater, and music all over the world. And to us, success was when an audience watched a performance from China and their view that they maybe only got from the media or from business or politics had to get a little bigger to make room for the art they were now seeing, to realize, well, wait a minute, all of that's in China too? Maybe I need to rethink my assumptions. And so
what you
that
just
was
said so
really the
inspiring.
inspiration for Ping Pong.
What you just said so inspiring and make me think about whether you have stories to tell. I'm sure you have many.
Well, one of the powerful ones, and one of the companies I worked with for many years, is Tao Dance Theater.
Yeah.
And it started out with 2 young choreographers who created an independent dance company, and we toured them all over the world, from a very unknown small company to now in 2023 they won the Silver Lion Award from the Venice Biennale, which is one of the highest awards internationally for dance. And being a contemporary artist, we would bring this company to different festivals. And I remember this one particular festival in Michigan. And after they watched the theater, the performance, I remember I loved standing in the lobby and listening to audiences as they left. And I kept hearing people say, well, I don't understand. So I thought there wasn't contemporary art in China because I thought it was all censored. And so again, these sort of assumptions and stereotypes that people know who hadn't spent as much time got to be pushed out of the way as they watched these incredibly innovative and talented performers with Tao Dance Theater.
It's amazing what you're trying to do. And also later with the West Kowloon Cultural District, it was at the very beginning from 0 to 1, that project, and eventually become what it is today. It was such an amazing place with so many events going on in that part of the world. So what is it like for you to be, you know, doing the groundwork there and build it until it become a really impressive one?
I love that it was called a cultural district rather than an arts district, because the purpose, I like to say the math is art plus life equals culture. When art is a regular part of your life, it's not something very elitist or isolated. When it's something that can just be part of your daily schedule, that builds a culture. And that was our goal with West Kowloon Cultural District, having it right on Victoria Harbor, having restaurants, big outdoor public park space where people could gather,
Yes.
to make it not intimidating to go interact with the art, to be able to make it accessible, to add value to people's lives. And it was exciting to open the first venue in 2019, the Xiju Center, Xiju Zhongxin, Heikok Zhongsan. And what was beautiful about
Center
that
of
big
Drama?
art center is the atrium was wide open. You walked in from the street, and there was a huge open plaza where we would do free performances for the community. Because again, we wanted it to be an invitation that the art can be for everybody. You don't have to buy a ticket if that's not part of what's capable for you.
Yeah.
We can still make this a cultural center where you can come and enjoy something that you otherwise, it doesn't have to be from a foreign country. Many young people in Hong Kong are intimidated by Cantonese opera. So we were building bridges across generations that way as well.
Yeah. So earlier, when everybody was more connected, things can be done. And now, apparently, you have to go through much more challenges in order to achieve something that in earlier years can be an easier piece of cake. Now, how do you digest this reality? And do you reflect upon what it was like? And how would you be able to, still function and be productive despite of this comparison?
I think of it as riding the waves. And certainly in the days leading up to the Beijing Olympics and the Shanghai Expo, everybody was interested in China, and China was interested in everybody. So there were so many opportunities for artists to tour, to do collaborations and co-productions. And there was just incredible demand and incredible supply. Where we are now is a time that is like, I don't want to say a hibernation, because in a hibernation, many things stop. I think things aren't stopping. People are just being a little bit more low key about them. They're not being as public. They're not talking about them in the same way that they used to be, because they're being a little more cautious. People don't want exchanges to be canceled. They're worried about visas. And so the art exchange, the tours are continuing to happen. They're happening at a lesser volume. But a lesser volume meaning both less frequently, but also more quietly. Maybe instead of tons and tons of tours all over the world, it might be a couple individual artist exchanges. There are still smaller foundations that are funding artists to do residencies in Asia, in North America. These are continuing. Artists are still very interested. The artists never stop being interested, just the opportunities start to narrow. And we all hope that this is not a permanent state of affairs. It might be for a while, but we hope it's temporary, and we just all turn the volume down, but keep doing what we're doing until we can turn it back up and be a little more loose and celebratory about it again.
Alison, a pleasure to know you for decades, and a pleasure to work with you for this interview as well.
Thank you, Tianwei. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. My latest conversations with Alison Friedman, a bridge builder between China and the United States. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tianwei. On behalf of my team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now, and I'll see you tomorrow.